Good evening. Welcome to the first ever, the premiere, the numero uno of the Scooting Scholar Report. I am your humble host, Richard Lawrence. Some of you have asked for me to continue the blog, and I've definitely thought about it, but I thought I'd try something a little different. So why settle for mere words on a page when you can have all this? Let's get started. And I want to start with this guy right here. That's right, Dr. William Henry Cosby, Jr. When you last heard from the Scooting Scholar all those many months ago, he was the topic of discussion. Well, it seems as that it has been quite a ride for the man once known as America's Dad. And according to documents uncovered recently by the Associated Press, it seems he did admit in a deposition that he did indeed give drugs to women with the intention of having sex with them. From sea to shining sea, a chorus has rung with repeating the words, "I told you so." Yeah, I told you so too. Well, this revelation has actually prompted even some of Mr. Cosby's staunchest supporters to actually realize the error of their ways. For instance, Jill Scott, the singer, actually said that she is now disappointed in Bill Cosby's behavior. And even Whoopi Goldberg, who was definitely in his corner, has now begun to come around and has admitted that maybe he's guilty after all. However, if we are to believe a recent story that hit the press this weekend, there's one person who has apparently not changed her mind one iota. That would be none other than Mrs. Cosby. Not this one. This one. That's right, Camille Cosby, Bill Cosby's wife of more than 51 years, 51 to be exact, has apparently said she believes none of the allegations to be true, and that all of the sex and drugs happened consensually. In a New York Post article published this past July 12, confidential sources, and I do have a problem with that, but nevertheless, confidential sources say Mrs. Cosby is well aware her husband has been a serial philanderer, but that he's not a rapist. Instead, she believes his many accusers took the drugs and did the deeds, knowing full well what they were getting into. Talk about standing by your man. As a set of behaviors, I get it. I really do. I get it. And Bill Cosby has definitely hit a low point. So I can understand that you just don't bail when things are getting rough. But come on, Camille. I'm not saying to leave the man, but it's been 40 different women. 40 different women have made accusations against her husband. And unfortunately, you're the one who sounds delusional. Perhaps we need to check to make sure Bill hasn't slipped you a little something. Now, speaking of delusional, this Confederate flag business has gotten absolutely ridiculous. You know, ever since the shooting deaths of the 9 parishioners at the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina back in June, the flag has come under fire like as never before. We had the governor of Alabama making an executive order to remove the flag from the state grounds. And even Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina, worked with the legislature to get the flag removed from its post right near the Capitol in Columbia. However, while that's all well and good, I'm not convinced that what these folks were doing was out of the goodness of their hearts or from their conscience, but what was politically expedient. But when you have situations as we've had recently, a backlash has developed. And that backlash has come against all of the calls to remove the embattled flag from public spaces. So one of the highlights of this backlash was a parade. Maybe you saw this parade that took place in and around Richmond, Virginia this past weekend as well. Now, I don't think the brilliant writers over at the satirical newspaper The Onion could have come up with something better than this. You see, according to reports, there were about 100 people who took part in a flag run that not only ran through the streets of Richmond, but also an adjoining town called Petersburg, Virginia. Now, the special thing about Petersburg is that Petersburg is 77% black. Yeah, so you can imagine what may have taken place there. Residents of the town allegedly responded to this parade of sorts by throwing water bottles and yelling racial slurs as the vehicles passed through. Here's a quote from one of the participants by the name of Chris Oliver. Mr. Oliver says, "The racial slurs are what really hurt me. It's uncalled for. There's no need for that in today's society." Are you kidding, Mr. Oliver? Come on now. You went through a black neighborhood? Did you really expect everyone to come out and cheer you and your group on as you passed through? Now, I will say, on the other hand, to my black people, I say, why fan the flames? The best response ever would have been to ignore this ignorance. Because as much as folks have been out there trying to convince us the flag is a symbol of honoring ancestors who fought valiantly, we know better. They are being intellectually ignorant by refusing to acknowledge that the flag was not just used by individuals honoring the past, or even by Klanspeople. No, this flag was also used as a symbol of defiance and intimidation by governments who were steadfast against change. Well, that wraps up this very first episode of the Scooting Scholar Report. And I want to thank you for joining me in this little experiment. So I just want to say thanks so much for joining me. Will it happen again? I hope so. But I'd love to hear from you on Twitter, where I'm at RJ Lawrence Jr., or on Facebook, where it's facebook.com/RJ Lawrence Jr. But in the meantime, well, I gotta scoot. See ya.